The heart is a reversible organ in that it beats and can be beaten. And as it is beaten, it beats beneath the skin, through the muscle, in the blood, to the bone. I was taking time away from dance when I tested positive for HIV. I was reassessing my performance career and wanting to go into choreography. Dance was everything. Dance was my passion. Dance was how I made a living. It's who I was at my best. But HIV took over. It was overwhelming. It felt like it was everywhere. It was all over my body. It was in my body, and I couldn't use my body the same way anymore. And I was aging. I was aging as a dancer, and now I was an aging dancer with HIV. The stigma around it was too shameful. HIV was what defined me now. It was no longer Shelley the artist, or even Shelley the mother, or Shelley the free spirit. When you're dealing with a diagnosis that changes how you act in the present, how you behave, how you share, how you tell your story, it changes everything. It was hard for my mom. She did not have the education, and of course, her vision of it was wrapped around the 90s media of, Philadelphia and movies that portrayed death. It was a terminal diagnosis. It was not a manageable chronic condition. It was a terminal diagnosis, and she had to learn past that, and I had to help her understand that I wasn't going to die. It was traumatic for her to hear. It was traumatic for her to support me. It was traumatic for my entire family. My father, we hadn't always been in contact all the time anyways, but when I was initially diagnosed, they were shocked and they thought that I must have done something wrong, that it was my fault. They couldn't wrap their head around the fact that I was knowingly infected. I think the initial shock of me wanting to talk to them, wanting to tell them, and them not being able to hear it, not being able to listen, it just shut down communication, and we didn't speak for years. My daughters were more informed than I was. They had more education than I did around HIV. My youngest daughter said, "It's okay, Mom, you're gonna be fine." So she had that knowledge that it wasn't a death sentence. My oldest daughter, I think, had more fear around how I had contracted it and what that would mean to me in the future. I think actually she could see the difficulties that were going to come. I think my youngest saw the positive of being positive because she had models, as it were, to look to and say, I know people that are living healthy lives, taking their medication, and they're doing okay. The stigma that swirls around the movies that were made in the 90s and the movements that happened, the science wasn't there yet. We didn't have antiretroviral therapy. There was random acts of stigma and violence towards persons living with HIV. There was thoughts of quarantine. There was thoughts of all sorts of really unbelievable, by today's standards, ways of dealing with this virus. And so some of that's stuck in the public's mind, and they don't realize that the science has gone far, far past that. We're no longer there anymore. We don't have a cure, but we have medication to make it a manageable chronic condition. but the ongoing stigma still exists. People still think about that, and they still question whether or not HIV should be criminalized or treated differently. That's where the change has to happen. Being out with your status is a personal decision, ultimately, first and foremost. There are certainly people living with HIV that, for them to disclose their status, could be life-threatening. So for some, it's just much easier not to be out with their status, to go get their meds, and to continue on in their life without telling anyone. For me, I really don't think it ever occurred to me not to be out with my status. Almost immediately when I was diagnosed, I realized that I was not going to be silent. It was too big. It was the only thing that I could do to empower myself to move forward. I needed to know that it wasn't my fault, but I was responsible for my own body. And to live with shame around that seemed not possible. It just didn't seem like a way I could live my life. The only way that I felt I could move forward was to be out and to be honest about my HIV status. I think it was really scary to think that I would lose people, but as I lost them one by one, the ones that fell by the wayside weren't going to be there in the long term anyway. And those that choose to stay, that choose to speak to me about HIV, and choose to support me living and working and surviving and thriving living with HIV, are the people I want around me. All of my identity for quite a while, quite a few years, was wrapped completely around HIV. And it's only been in the last few years that I've started to release some of that and bring back some of the things that make Shelley, Shelley. And so this is how it works. I was born May 30th, 2008, when I tested positive for HIV. Heartbreak is heartbreak, and all that is written in stone can be changed with breath. And the destiny of stone is dust, and breath makes dust dance.